All right, so I wanted to go over a couple different examples of how I'll run in-season work. Specifically, these are all individuals that are playing in minor league baseball right now, either as relievers or as starters. But I wanted to go through a couple different examples of how I'll put their training together. So, because I think a lot of times people think, well, this is how you do it and this is the only way you do it, but it really comes down to being able to match what work. Like when we're in season, it comes down to being able to match what works best for the individual athlete. So like this specific athlete here, I'll just like briefly show the text. I don't know if you're going to be able to read it. You might have to pause it if you want to read it. But basically, we were training, 4, 5, 6 months, I want to say, before his season started. And then once he started getting the season, once he started doing more throwing with that, basically what he found was like the best way for his arm to feel best was in terms of upper body work, in terms of upper body movements, to back off the higher output stuff. So back off a lot of the lifting stuff and pretty much just do joint moves, impulses, slow lowers, that type of work. And even with his shoulder specifically, he's like, I pretty much just hammer finger, wrist, elbow moves, and the shoulder I kind of leave alone. And that's what he has found to allow his arm to actually feel best, and while still doing like the lower half work. So the point with that is like that's not the way that I would typically set up an in-season training program or session, but like if that's what works, then that's what we're going to go with. It would be absolutely idiotic to not go with what works for that individual. And understand that people are at different times, or the body just responds differently. Like everybody has a different kind of perception, interpretation, way they go about things, etc. So we want to make sure that we're doing what works best for the athlete. So that's one example. This is another one. If you'd be able to read it. But so like for this athlete, we had been training at this point. He'd been training for like a year and a half or 2 years. Is a reliever in a minor league organization. So he wanted to be able to throw. He wanted to be prepared to throw like 3-4 days a week if he had to at a high intent in game. So the way that we've gone about attacking it for him, and this has worked for him, is like he wants the training to literally feel like it's more difficult than what he does in a game, so that he is prepped and ready to go in a game, right? And that has worked very well for him in terms of being able to go more often, because when we first started, he would generally be on the injured list 1, 2, 3 times a year, right? And he didn't feel like he was doing everything that he could do to prepare. And as we started to build, like, okay, this is what we can do to prepare, let's do this. The way that we eventually programmed is like last year, the way that we programmed is he just did exactly in season. He did exactly what he would do in the off. In season, he did exactly what we did in the off season, which is basically like we're training every day, almost as if it doesn't matter whether he's throwing or not. Because as a reliever for him, like, he needs to be able to go in and just every day be prepared to go. So in the mornings, he would just train, and then if he threw in game, he'd throw in game. And that's just what it was. And that's how he felt that he worked best. But if we go back to the first individual, that won't work for that individual right now. And that's absolutely fine. We want to do what works best. So those are 2 different ways they'll set up. A third way is, let's see if I can zoom this in enough so that you can see it. It's like, maybe if we focus on it. Maybe not. I don't think you'll be able to see it. But basically the way that I lay it out is like each week we have your next upper session, next lower session, and then next prep session. So each of those are going to be a little bit different focuses, right? And then at the end of the week, I also have like your post-throw day for that week, or his post-throw day for that week. So this is a third way that'll set up, and he's a reliever as well, where it's like, and he's kind of gone more towards, I'm just going to train in the morning, because I don't know exactly when I'm going to be throwing, so I want to train. So he's gone a little bit more towards that as we've gotten further into it, but it also works. Like I did this method with the individual that I talked about last, like the first year that we did stuff, where he wasn't quite ready to just go ham every day, where it's like, okay, we have your next upper, we have your next lower, and then we have your next prep session. We're going to do the upper sessions after or on the same day as your high intent throwing day and game. We're going to do the lower session the day after that, and then the prep days are in there for like the days in between, right? So we stagger the sessions around when it is that you throw. And then I would just like get information from him or from them on this is the last training session that I did. So that's the next training session that I would create. So if they did a lower, the next one that I would create would be lower. If they did an upper, the next one that I would create would be an upper. If they did a prep, the next one that I would create would be a prep, right? And prep session basically means like we want to get your body feeling greasy, feeling buttery, feeling good, feeling juice, etc. It's not like a high output upper or lower session, but we're still getting like a good amount of stimulus. And so that could be joint moves, impulses, slow lowers, movement type work, etc. So those are 3 different ways that I'll go about programming. And that's specifically for baseball, but it can apply across everything, where it's we want to be able to take, like, for myself as a coach, like, I have kind of my ideas of how I want things to be. I want to be able to best marry that with where the individual is at right now. So that means that when I'm working one-on-one with somebody, or when we're working one-on-one with somebody, it's not like we kind of have this base program or idea of thought, like, this is how we're going to do things, but it's going to change and adjust, especially in season, so that individual can go and perform, because, like, the sport is the most important thing at that time. So have your principles, but don't be set in stone in terms of how you apply those principles, so that you can best match what you're doing with the athlete.